Hello my friends and welcome to another Tuesday of tutorial. I am Leonardo Perez Nieto and today I will show you the long version of how to paint a sailing boat in watercolor. We begin by marking the horizon line with a ruler or straight angle. As you see, I marked this horizon line on the upper part of the page. It is just a little bit bigger than a third of it. And then let's sketch the sailing boat. We can do a very simple shape like this, with two parallel horizontal lines and with tilted and curving ends. Then to give it perspective, we add another line over here. And draw a longer vertical line for the mast. And this shorter pole in front. I'm drawing with a graphite mechanical pencil with an HB, which is medium hardness lead. I'm actually making it a little bit shorter to keep this proportion like a boat. And I erase the lines that I don't need anymore with a kneaded eraser. The kneaded eraser is softer and doesn't damage the paper as much. Let's add the sails. One will go all the way to the mast over here and then horizontally just above the boat, and it will be a little triangle like this. And then the other one will go all the way over here to this pole, and let's make it a bit rounded, as if it were bulging because of the strong wind. Like so. And let's draw 3 people. It will be just an indication of them. I'll go over some lines so as to see them better. Good. Okay, good. We have this very simple sketch done. Now, with a small brush, I add watercolor masking fluid. We will use this in order to mask the areas that we want to keep very light, so that we can add a lot of paint on top with no worries, and then we will take it off toward the end. Basically, we will be masking 2 lines here, and to go straighter, I'm using a ruler, as you see. This line is the wake of the boat, that will remain lighter than most of the rest of the sea. And then we will make another line just above it, which is not a wake, it will be just a reflection of those that sometimes get created naturally. I think this will look very nice. It is mostly an aesthetic decision. We will do the second line that I was talking about here. I'm not using a ruler this time because I'm taking the other one as a reference, so I know I can go more or less straight. And I don't need them perfectly straight because obviously there are waves and that kind of thing that would allow us for some imperfections or for some movement, let's say. I am adding more masking fluid to this area to make this, let's say, central part a little bit wider. And at the end, it will also be lighter. It should extend to this part in the front as well. I'll reinforce this line a little bit more because it seemed to me a little bit too thin and I was afraid it would not mask enough. So I'm going over it again. Good. And let's also mark some little spots, some dots here and there, which will represent sparkling reflections on the sea. And let's add some more. Very good. We are ready to start painting. First, I will get all the area of the sky wet. And since we don't want the paint to run into the rest of the painting, I'm flipping it upside down and then lifting just a little bit the upper part of my path by sticking something behind it, like an eraser or something. We get the surface wet first, so that when we apply the paint, it takes that surface smoothly. If we were just to apply it directly on dry paper, the brush strokes will show a lot. But in this case, we can just put it there and let the paint run on the paper and even show the texture, which is great, I think. I'm using a mix of cobalt blue and ultramarine blue. And I give it a touch with a little ultramarine purple. We apply the color and pretty much let it sit there to dry. Of course, we can add more if we want. Remember that when it dries, it becomes a little lighter than when it is wet. So we apply the color a little bit more intense because we know it will lighten up a little bit. And I want it to be just a little bit darker down here. I say down here because obviously the page is upside down. I will flip it over in a moment. Okay. Now let's get the lower part of the painting, that's for the sea, wet. It may be hard to see what I am doing because I am just using plain water. And once it is all wet, we can add the color. On this area I applied some violet mixed with burnt sienna and with a lot of water. And now I add some yellow ochre. This color is great, like to give the impression of the reflection of the sun at sunset or stuff like that. And let's add some more of the violet up here, this time more straight, with less water. I don't mind that I went a little bit over the sky. I am not being too careful about that because I will soon paint some mountains up there. And we let it run a little bit. I don't want it to accumulate here, so I move it, now that it is still wet. I am applying no new color. Right now I am just making sure that it doesn't accumulate here by the mask. Very good. Once the paper and the paint dry, we can do the mountains. We use a grayish blue which is very watered down. And we apply it on dry paper like so. I will make it a little bit bigger actually, taller. I don't want it totally smooth and flat, because it is supposed to have trees and changes at the edge, even if it is very far away and you hardly would see those. Alright. We wait for a little bit, and once that one dries, we paint a closer layer of mountains with a darker color, or with a more intense color, I should say, like this. It is also a bluish gray, or actually a grayish blue. It has a lot of ultramarine blue in it. I am finding that the paper was not totally dry on this right side, but it is not a problem at all. It will run a little bit, and let's taste it, because it may just look fine. And if not, we wait a little bit to dry and redo it, like this. Good. And once that one dried, I will get the whole paper wet once more, this time the whole paper, to add more color. Right now I'm just adding the water. And before I add paint, I'm actually going to lightly brush or scrub the edges of these mountains so as to take some of the color off and soften them. Okay, good. Now let's add some color. I want the whole painting to be darker, actually. And that is because one of the main characteristics or features of this little painting will be these lighter wakes or waves that we masked against the dark. And so that they look bright, we need to have everything else around them dark. Otherwise, if everything is very light, there will be not enough contrast and they will not show. In other words, to have our lights really stand out, we need everything else around them dark. That is why I am adding more color to darken the painting. At this stage, I don't mind if the color mixes a little bit one with the other or runs down, the color of the sky runs into the sea and stuff like that. I actually want this to occur so that the whole painting integrates and doesn't look like two separate things or something like that. And as I told you, I intend to darken the whole thing more. Let's add some more burnt sienna. And then some Venetian red. With some violet as well. We add some touches and let it run, let it dry. Let the watercolor work its magic. I love to paint in watercolor. It is a pleasure. And while the paper is still wet, we can keep adding color and getting this effect. We should darken it even more. We wait for the paper to dry, and once that happens, I will darken the lower part even more. As I told you, when it dries, it lightens up a little bit, and I think the upper part, the sky and the mountains, are pretty okay, but the lower part is still too light. We need to darken it, because after all, that is the area that is by the lights that we want, and so we need to make sure it is dark enough. So we add color once more. This time I am adding the color while the paper is dry. You can also do it in this way, especially if it is a small painting, and you can go back and continue your way down before it dries, because if it dries, then you will get a mark there. And let's go even darker in the lower part, like so. I am adding a very dark blue, an indigo blue, and a little bit of a dark brown to the mix. Very good. Now let's wait for it to dry. And once it is totally dry, we can take the mask off by rubbing with an eraser, like this. It just peels off pretty easily. And we uncover the white of the paper. Of course, we don't want it to be totally white like this, so we will paint a color on top of it. But before doing that, let's paint the sailing boat. For this, I use the indigo blue mixed with a little touch of black. And I will paint the whole boat, including the sails, with this tone and with these colors, because since the watercolor is pretty transparent, we may have to come back and do another layer once it dries. I am considering that the whole boat is in shade, and therefore we don't really see the colors or distinguish the different shades. We will do this pretty much flat on a dark value. Of course, for this I'm using a very fine brush. Let's fill in the cell that is in front. The sail, I will make it arrive just above the body of the boat. And the other sail, the triangle. By the time I finish the sails, this lower part of the body is dry, so we can go ahead and give another pass to it, like so. Good. And let's not forget the people. 3 characters, 3 sailors will be in the boat, on the boat. I think a reflection would look pretty nice. Let's do it like this, with zigzagging motions. I'm using the same color, but with just a little bit more water. As I mentioned earlier, I don't want the white stripes to be totally white, so I am adding some color to them, especially on the sides. I added some yellow ochre, very thin with water, and also on this side. I think that looks more real, more natural, if it has a tone. And let's add some more also to the lower one. I add a little point here, just a little higher, and then I'll give another pass to the boat, to make it darker, of course. We do the sail that is behind, and the one in front. Good. Being darker, it stands out a lot more. Maybe too much, we will see. Good. Once it is dry, we get the whole paper wet again to soften some lines. And also because after all, I think the boat is just a tiny bit too dark. So I will lighten it just a little bit. And also I will try to soften the lines of the horizon and the lines of the wake and the light lines that I have horizontally. So first I get the whole paper wet. And then with a more bristle, harder brush, I go very lightly over the edges of these lines. That should soften it enough. And also, when I went over the boat, originally when I was getting the paper wet, I already took some paint off of it, so I will not need to do anything else with it. And if you made it all the way to this point, I would love to know it. Please in the comments write me the secret code, Sailing in the Light. And it's ready. If you enjoyed it, please give it a like, subscribe to Fine Art Tips if you haven't done so already, Click on the little bell to get notifications of new videos, and I will see you with more creations on Tuesday.